She looked me in the eye, said she wasn't in a good place. Said she needed time? Space. A reset. It's not you, it's where I am mentally. She held my hand the whole time she said it. Tears in her eyes. The kind that make you feel guilty for wanting more clarity. Like asking what? Not in a good place. Meant would make you the selfish one. So I backed off. Gave her the breathing room she asked for. Told myself it wasn't rejection. Told myself it was maturity. Compassion. Patience. 3 nights later, she was at a rooftop bar, laughing against the shoulder of my coworker. Dave. The same Dave I sit 2 desks over from. The same Dave who once asked me if she was the one. The same Dave who, when I told him she needed space, looked at me and said, "Tough break, man." Yeah. Tough break. I found out through someone else. One of those friends who thought I knew. He showed me the photo like it was gossip. I stared at the screen for 5 full seconds before handing it back without a word. Then I sat there, in my apartment, with the lights off, and went over every sentence she'd said that week. "I'm not okay right now. I just need a little time. You've done nothing wrong." Each one sounded like mercy. Like honesty. Like someone trying not to hurt me. And every one of them was a setup for a lie she didn't want to carry the weight of directly. Because telling someone the truth takes courage. But asking for their patience while you audition someone else? That's cowardice dressed in empathy. I didn't confront her. What was I gonna say? You lied? She'd deny it. Twist it. Tell me I misunderstood her emotional state. That she didn't owe me anything because technically we weren't in a relationship. I knew that playbook. I'd watched her use it on her ex. I just never thought I'd be next. Dave didn't look me in the eye at work. That was the first clue. The second was when he took the long way to the break room. Like my presence was radiation and he was just trying not to get sick. I kept showing up to work. Kept doing my job. Kept pretending I didn't see the way they laughed together when they thought no one was looking. But I was looking. Not out of jealousy. Out of disbelief. Because it wasn't just that she moved on. It was that she lied about needing time to do it. She turned my grace into a runway. And Dave? He turned my silence into a green light. I stayed quiet for 3 weeks. I let her narrative breathe. Let her spin it into whatever version made her feel less like a villain. Then I sent her one message. Just a screenshot. Her text about not being in a good place. And below it, a photo someone had taken of her with Dave at the bar. Her hand on his chest. His arm around her waist. No caption. No question. Just proof. She left me on read. And I swear that silence said more than any apology could. I didn't spiral. I didn't drink. I didn't rage post. I just got real quiet and real focused. Started therapy. Again. Started waking up earlier. Writing more. Saying less. The thing about being betrayed is that it splits you. Not into weak and strong. But into before and after. Before, I made excuses for red flags. After, I stopped needing closure from people who can't give it. Before, I believed words. After, I waited for the pattern. Dave left the company 6 months later. Said he was relocating. I didn't throw a party. I didn't shake his hand. I just cleared his name out of our Slack channel and went back to work. She messaged me 3 months after that. "Hey. I know I don't deserve a response, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You didn't deserve how I handled things. I wasn't honest. I just didn't want to be the bad guy." I didn't reply. Because she was wrong. She didn't become the bad guy when she got caught. She was the bad guy when she decided that lying kindly was better than telling the truth cruelly. Now I sleep better. Now I don't mistake ambiguity for complexity. Now I don't hand over grace to people who treat honesty like a chore. The next time someone says they need space, I'll give it to them. Not as a favor. As a boundary. Because love without honesty is just manipulation wearing perfume. And I'm not standing close enough to inhale it again. The hard part wasn't losing her. It was losing the version of her I had built in my head. See, I thought she was different. Thought all the time she talked about honesty and clarity and doing the work actually meant something. I thought all the late-night talks about her exes and what she'd learned were signs she was past the games. But the thing about people who spend too much time talking about the lessons they've learned is that they often haven't really learned them. They've just memorized how to sound like they have. So I grieved that version of her. Quietly. The one I thought I could build a future with. The one who said she felt safe with me. The one who used phrases like emotional bandwidth and holding space like that made her emotionally responsible. It didn't. It just made her good at framing selfishness as self-care. One night, maybe 4 months after the last message, I ran into her. Total accident. Grocery store, of all places. I was grabbing oat milk, and she came around the corner like a plot twist I didn't ask for. She looked surprised. Then guilty. Then worse, like she was trying to gauge whether she was allowed to smile. "Hey," she said. "Hey. How've you been?" I gave her a look. Neutral. Not bitter. Not warm. Just level. "Good." She nodded, like that was more than she deserved. "You look calm." I said nothing. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else. Maybe explain. Maybe apologize again. I didn't give her the space. I just walked away. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need anything from her anymore. And that was the moment I realized I was free. I started seeing someone new. Her name was Morgan. She worked in nonprofit consulting. Smart, kind, grounded. The kind of person who didn't flinch when I said I'd been through something heavy, but also didn't push me to unpack it before I was ready. She didn't try to fix me. She didn't play the cool girl who pretends not to care too much. She asked real questions. She showed up on time. She said what she meant. And at first, I didn't know what to do with that kind of stability. It felt unfamiliar. Unsettling. Safe. But slowly I leaned in. Let myself believe I didn't have to earn someone's love by bleeding for it first. A few months in, Morgan said something that caught me off guard. We were sitting on her balcony, drinking tea, watching the city go dim. She said, "It's weird how calm you are. Like you've seen too much to waste energy on the wrong things." I laughed. "I used to set myself on fire to keep other people warm. Now I don't even hand them matches." She nodded. "Good. You shouldn't." And it hit me, how far I'd come. I saw Dave once after he left the company. At a mutual friend's birthday party. He looked tired. Like someone who had learned too late that attention isn't the same thing as connection. He didn't approach me. Just stood across the room, sipping his drink, avoiding eye contact. And I didn't care. Not because I'd forgiven him. Because I'd outgrown the version of myself that needed to be acknowledged to feel vindicated. She sent one more message, months later. "I heard you're with someone new. I hope she treats you the way you always tried to treat me." I didn't respond. Not because I was bitter. Because Morgan was next to me, asleep, hand resting on my chest like an anchor. And I wasn't about to trade peace for nostalgia. Now, when someone tells me they're not in a good place, I believe them. And then I walk away. Not because they're bad. But because I finally know what I deserve. And it's not someone who confuses vulnerability with a hall pass. It's not someone who weaponizes softness. It's someone who shows up. Stays honest. Loves loudly, without needing to lie quietly first. And I've got that now. So I'm done reopening chapters I've already bled across. This is the sequel. And I like where it's headed. There's a moment in every story where the healing stops being loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just shows up quietly in the form of consistency. That's what life with Morgan became: simple, steady consistency. No peaks of emotional chaos, no long silences needing to be decoded. Just mornings where she poured 2 cups of coffee without asking, and nights where I didn't question whether she meant what she said. And that kind of peace takes getting used to when you've lived too long with people who confuse distance for depth. We planned a weekend trip upstate. Nothing fancy. A cabin, some hiking, no service. The kind of getaway that used to sound boring but now sounded perfect. We packed light, stopped for gas, laughed at nothing. Morgan dozed off with her head tilted toward the window and a playlist humming low. I remember thinking, this is what it's supposed to feel like. Not butterflies. Not fireworks. Just breathing fully for the first time in a long time. The night before we left, I got a message request on Instagram. From her. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. Hey. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I saw you were upstate this weekend. I'm here too. Can we talk? I read it twice. My stomach didn't twist. My chest didn't clench. It felt like watching a rerun of a show I no longer cared about. I didn't respond. Morgan came out of the shower and saw my face. Everything okay? I nodded. Yeah. Just old echoes trying to sound important. She smiled. Didn't press. Just curled up beside me on the couch and passed me a blanket. We stayed in that cabin for 3 days. I didn't check my phone after that. And when I turned it back on, her message was still unread. I let it stay that way. Because the truth is, not every version of closure comes with a conversation. Sometimes it's just a choice. A quiet one. The decision not to go backwards when you finally know how to move forward. Back in the city, life fell into rhythm. Morgan got a promotion. I started drafting a second book, nothing autobiographical this time. Just fiction. But even the fiction had my fingerprints on it. It's hard to write anything without bleeding a little, even if you call it something else. People started asking how I got over it. I'd smile and say, I didn't get over it. I outgrew it. Because healing isn't erasure. It's expansion. You don't forget what happened. You just become someone who's no longer defined by it. Then came the wedding invite. Mutual friend. Of course she'd be there. Morgan looked at the RSVP and asked, You want to go? I hesitated. Then nodded. Yeah. I think it's time. She didn't ask questions. Just picked a dress and booked the hotel. The day of the wedding, she looked like something still and luminous. Not loud. Not flashy. Just full of presence. And I felt lucky. Really deeply lucky. She was there. She saw me before I saw her. Approached cautiously, like someone walking across ice. Hi, she said. Hi. She glanced at Morgan, who was talking to someone across the room. She's beautiful. She's real, I said. She nodded. Looked down. I just wanted to say, I get it now. What I did. What I cost. I know. There was a pause. I hope you're happy, she said. I am. And that was it. No drama. No apology I needed. No speech. Just truth. Quiet and clean. Later that night, Morgan and I danced under string lights like no one else was watching. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was performing healing. I was just living it. Fully. Unapologetically. With someone who never needed to break me just to prove I could be put back together. Because this was always the end game. Not revenge. Not vindication. Not even justice. Just peace. And a life that no longer needs a villain to feel whole. Months passed after the wedding. Life kept moving, the way it always does when you finally stop looking backward. Morgan and I started looking for a new apartment. A place that felt more ours than mine. My lease was ending, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like moving meant escape. It meant expansion. Building something forward. We found a second-floor walk-up with too much light and creaky floors. She loved it. I loved that she loved it. We painted the kitchen on a Sunday, ate greasy Thai food on the floor surrounded by boxes, and laughed about how many mugs we had between us. It was simple. Uncomplicated. Good. That kind of good that doesn't ask for validation. One night we were walking home from dinner when Morgan said, "You ever think about writing about this part?" This? Yeah. The after. The quiet. The calm that used to scare you. I looked at her. You think anyone would read that? She smiled. I think it's the only part worth reading. That night, I started a new document. Not about her. Not about betrayal. Not about the man I had to become just to stop hurting. But about this. About what it means to finally live in the truth without bleeding every time you turn a page. I got an email from my publisher. They wanted a follow-up. Expected something raw. Maybe even messier than the first. Instead, I sent them 5 chapters about peace. About how love isn't the storm, it's the roof that keeps you dry. They were hesitant. I didn't care. I told them I wasn't writing for catharsis anymore. I was writing for clarity. The book came out a year later. It didn't go viral. It didn't break records. But it found its people. And more importantly, it found me. She reached out one last time. The original she. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, a single page. I kept looking for someone to teach me how to love. You were the first person who tried. And I'm sorry I treated you like a lesson instead of a gift. I'm not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know I see it now. I read it once. Folded it. Set it on the windowsill. Then went back to the living room, where Morgan was waiting with her head on the armrest and her legs draped over mine. She didn't ask what the letter was. She just looked at me and said, "You okay?" I nodded. "I'm more than okay." And I meant it. Because some people write you love letters after they've already written you out of their lives. But the right person doesn't wait until the story's over. They write it with you. One quiet, honest chapter at a time. And that's the story I finally learned how to live. Peace isn't a destination. It's a habit. A decision you make every morning before the noise starts. Morgan and I found our rhythm. The kind that doesn't need fixing. The kind that grows in the little things, like sharing toothpaste, choosing groceries without texting first, or knowing when the other person just needs to sit in silence without being asked why. We adopted a dog. A rescue with one eye and more personality than manners. Named her Olive because she was tiny, feisty, and surprisingly graceful when she wanted to be. Olive took to Morgan immediately. It took her a bit longer to trust me. And that felt fair. Because that's what rebuilding your life honestly looks like. Earning trust slowly. Showing up without needing applause. I was invited to speak on a podcast about emotional resilience. The host opened with the question, "What's one thing you would tell the version of yourself from 5 years ago?" I thought about it. Really sat in the question. And I said, I'd tell him, stop confusing potential for partnership. Just because someone makes you feel something doesn't mean they're someone you should build with. There was a pause. Then the host said, "That's going to stick with a lot of people." And I hoped it would. Because that version of me, the one who waited for someone to choose him, who mistook breadcrumbs for connection, he needed to hear it. And if one person out there was still living in that space, maybe my story would be the nudge they needed to walk away. I ran into Dave again. At a conference. Of all places. He looked surprised. Maybe even nervous. He walked over like someone prepared to get hit, emotionally if not physically. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He shifted his weight. "I just wanted to say, I know it's too late, but I'm sorry. For how I handled it. For not being straight with you." I looked at him for a long beat. "You know what the hardest part was?" I said. "What?" "Not that you went for her. Not that she lied. But that you let me sit across from you, day after day, pretending like nothing had changed." He nodded, ashamed. "I know. I was a coward." "Yeah. But we were all younger then." He looked relieved. "You're a better man than me." "No," I said. I'm just a man who finally decided to stop betraying himself to keep the peace. He didn't argue. He just nodded and walked away. That night, Morgan and I went to a small jazz club. No name on the door. Just music that vibrated in your chest. She leaned over mid-song and whispered, "You've been quiet since the conference." I said, "I ran into Dave." Her eyebrows lifted. And I let him go." She smiled. "Good. Because forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't about erasing the past. It's about deciding it doesn't get to write your present. And mine? It's written in shared laughter, unspoken trust, and the kind of love that doesn't need fixing. Just room to keep growing. The funny thing is, peace doesn't make headlines. There's no dramatic score, no last-minute twist. It just sits there in your chest like something you thought you lost and learned how to live without, until one day, you realize it never left. It just got buried under the noise. Morgan and I started talking about the future in practical terms. Not dream talk. Real stuff. Marriage. Kids. Where we wanted to grow old. What mattered and what didn't. She didn't pressure me. She never had. But one night she asked a question so quietly I almost missed it. "Do you think we're writing something that lasts?" I looked at her. The light from the kitchen casting half of her face in shadow. Olive snoring softly at our feet. And I said, "Yeah. I think we already are." I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. This time, it wasn't about regret. It was about reflection. She wrote, "I used to think healing meant making things right with the people you hurt. But maybe it just means telling the truth out loud and letting go of what doesn't belong to you anymore." She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't ask for anything. And I didn't feel obligated to respond. Because we were two people who shared a story. But I had finished that chapter. And she was finally learning how to stop rereading it. Morgan and I got engaged quietly. No grand gesture. No cameras. Just two people on a hike, hands clasped, future unspoken but understood. She looked at me and said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "I've never been more." We didn't rush the wedding. We planned slowly. Deliberately. Every detail chosen with the same intention we used to build the life around it. The day we stood in front of our people, I didn't think about the past. Not once. I just looked at her and thought, this is what the end of a storm feels like. Not dramatic. Just clean. After the wedding, I found myself writing again. Not about heartbreak. Not about trauma. About beginnings. About the kind of love that grows in full sunlight. About people who don't just promise, they prove. About how sometimes the most radical thing you can do is let someone love you before you've completely finished healing. Because real love doesn't wait for perfection. It builds with the pieces you have. And then hands you more. We never took a honeymoon. Not because we didn't want one, but because we realized, somewhere in the middle of planning it, that the life we built was already the escape. We didn't need to fly halfway across the world to find peace. It was in our mornings. In Olive's bark. In shared playlists. In brushing our teeth to the same mirror. And honestly, that felt better than any beach. But we still went away eventually. A quiet cabin in Vermont. Books, blankets, no phone signal. It felt like the world stopped spinning long enough for us to breathe deeply, without interruption. One night, wrapped in layers of flannel and steam from our mugs, Morgan asked me if I ever thought about the past anymore. I said, "Only when I need to remind myself what I'll never settle for again." She nodded. Same. The last time I ever heard from her was through someone else. A mutual friend sent me a photo, her, now in a new city. Different haircut. Same eyes. A caption that read, "Starting over. Again." I didn't feel anything. Not anger. Not sadness. Not even the impulse to reach out. Just a distant kind of hope. The kind you offer strangers when you're rooting for them from afar. Because some people are meant to be part of your past. And that's where they should stay. We moved into a new house not long after. Nothing big. Just enough. A small garden. A porch swing. Room for the life we'd spent years sketching in late-night conversations. We hosted our first dinner party that fall. I grilled. Morgan made her famous roasted potatoes. Olive got more attention than either of us. Someone made a toast halfway through dessert. To second chances? They said. I smiled. Not because I believed in second chances from other people, but because I believed in giving one to yourself. Later that night, after the dishes were done and the house was quiet again, I sat on the back step with Morgan. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Do you ever feel like we survived something? She asked. I thought about it. Then said, no. I think we chose something. Every day. That's harder than surviving. She squeezed my hand. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the story wasn't ending, it was beginning again. Not in spite of the scars, but because of them. Because peace isn't what you find at the end of a journey. It's what you build every time you decide not to run. And this time, I stayed.